think, like I've kind of said, Sonoma events are one of my favorite things to do, because in many communities you have local authors and people don't always show up for them. I hear stories from different bookstores, and I think about it and I go, hey, we do great on local events because we have a great community who take care of themselves and they take care of each other. And specifically in the case of Katy, they want to learn about conflict and communication, which is a beautiful thing to learn as a community. You don't have any community in the world without there being some friction, and you have to learn how to deal with it. And like Katy said, having a hairball, you want to get rid of it. You want to cough it up and you want to clear the communication out. Now, obviously, Katy is a licensed marriage, and family counselor. She knows a hell of a lot more than I do about this. So without further ado, if you can welcome Katy here.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to everybody. Oh my God, this is huge tonight. I'm used to being in a private space looking at other people. So anyway, I'm nervous, scared. Don't anybody be mean to me. All right, so I brought something to demonstrate the hairball. If you don't know what it is, for those of you who haven't been trained by me, it's just something that the cat does to get rid of what's stuck in his or her throat. And cats have a lot of hairballs lately. Have you noticed? So, you know, my writing started just writing and journal writing and getting out my hairball. And so I brought a few for some of you who may need one to take home, just to remind you to get them out when things start to bother you. You know, just hold this, keep this close by. I'll have some later for other people. I don't know if I can get it over your neck. Okay, there we go. So there's Hairball's gifts. So, here we are, 9/11, September 11th. I didn't plan to have this happen on that date, but when I talked to Reader's Books, they said it was available. And when I got off the phone, I went, oh my God, 9/11, and I'm talking about conflict. So, I want to try to summarize. Some of you know I've been really worried because I have a lot to say, and I really want to say it today. It's a legacy for me to write this book. So here's how I see it. We all have a round ball above our necks, right? And that it's a powerful machine. The round ball above our necks, it reacts with fight or flight, as the terrorists must have done. The stories in our head must have been stories in their heads. Whatever their stories were about why they did what they did is why it occurred. Beliefs, powerful. Fears, unmet needs, longings, a need to protect or belong, all things that cause us to react and fight. The amygdala brain cuts off feeling when we're afraid. So that ball up there is a busy thing, and it can be destructive. It cuts off empathy when afraid. On 9/11, 2,830 people were killed, dying terrifying, defenseless deaths, calling wives and kids saying, I love you, before they burned to death, smothered, or jumped out of windows, as we all remember, to their deaths. Here's the question. How do we still have so much conflict in our world? And what can be done about it? I'm going to first give you a very brief, we're done at 7 tonight, so this is going to be as brief as I can do, overview of my book. So I've been a therapist for over 40 years, and my work began with clients, for years, just being a therapist, doing the best I could to hear people and help them work through things. But then the book took on an obsession for me, because as I get older, this is like really, really important for me. What does repair broken, ruptured relationships? Most of us have them. We've all been through the vaccines and political discord, even in our personal lives. So I had to also look at my own losses and repairs, what I had learned from inner and outer conflicts and how to resolve them. Then deep dive into research, because I just couldn't believe what I was learning. Why? Oh, why is there still this tendency in the human being to rupture, destroy, divorce, cut off, shun? It goes on and on. So we have deep, ongoing, historic, and continuing conflict. We know it. All of us sitting here, both politically and personally. So what I found is it's not just the sociopaths. In our conversations, we like to say, well, that guy or that person is the problem. But no, not in the research. People follow sociopaths and, punishing leaders. Why is that? Too much for tonight, but I'll give you a snippet. Timothy Horner found very powerful work on this. He interviewed people who had committed genocide and slaughtered and murdered and tortured others to find out what they were feeling and still believing about why they had done such acts. And they said, well, we were told it was a sin not to, or it's what we were told. In the end, he said, the tragic flaw in humanity is social bonding. We want to belong to the extent that we do what we are told. Another person I want to mention early on, just in case any of you want to study any of this, a man named Brian Klaas, Klaas, did a very interesting study on why we like, or some people follow, destructive dictators. And the short story is, it's an anthropological learning. It's actually in our brains and in our DNA, that when we were cavemen, we needed the big, strong prowess to protect our tribe. It's still in us. So that is my brief summary of why we're in some of the problems we're in. And so some of my personal stories in the book are from such things as the 08-09 foreclosure years, during which I had to communicate with Chase Bank through conflict for 2 years. I finally got my house back after living through terrible, terrible agony. But I want to say that almost 900,000 people lost their homes in 08. 1 in every 54 households. These are very big, huge problems. And my story, if I can tell it to you, I will. There's not time for it tonight. How that ended up was really poignant. I write in the book about my eating disorder, how I lost 100 pounds by talking to the different parts of myself. I believe we are each a kaleidoscope, and there are different parts to the prism. So I had to talk to my inner child who was eating because she was hungry for love. And then I had to talk to my inner rebel because she didn't want to lose weight just because she was a woman in a feminist body. Then I had the part that, which part? Oh, the critic was saying, you shouldn't have that donut. And I said, well, screw you, I'm having it. Anyway, so it was a work, it was a job. It goes on. I can see it's going to take me too long to tell you all of it. Many family friendships, losses, and gains. Physical ailments cured because the doctors told me I would never walk again. They told me that I would have a permanently damaged sex life. Better stories for later. And bottom line, those were all cured through community conversations. Word of mouth, people giving me information. Done. So then I want to talk about my work as a therapist and what it's been like, because one of the things that completely blows my mind is when you've watched people go through repair in your office for 40 years, it's so moving, and it's so profound to watch it, especially to watch it and then to turn on the news at the end of the day and see it going on all over the world. It just made me crazy because I wanted to see, how could I see that the repair in my office could be duplicated out there? So what I see in my office, I'll give you one glimmer because it's too much, it'll all take too much time. But basically, when you see a father who hasn't spoken to his daughter for 5 years, and he is over 70 years old, and they start telling the truth, and the daughter is scared to be honest, but because I create a safe place for these conversations, it came out that she had experienced him as a bully and had felt insecure and beat up emotionally by him. He was shocked because in his story, in his head, he had done everything he thought was helpful to her, giving her advice, telling her what to do about things, asking her questions, etc. But that's not how she experienced him. He sobbed. She cried and said, "Oh, thank God, thank you, we are here." This is just a snippet. Basically, if you forget everything else I say tonight, remember a couple things. The profound importance of respectful communication and radical reaching out. That means that when you are scared to bring up something difficult, when you feel a tension in a relationship, when you feel estranged from someone, I'm going to challenge you at the end of the evening, not to do it tonight, of course, but to think about addressing that person and seeing if you can repair that hole in our community. Because how I see these estranged and tense relationships is it creates a hole in the community. It pokes a hole in the fabric of our togetherness and starts building stories that are judgments and eventually create, I believe, less closeness. So, the essence of it is valuing communication. We need a new paradigm. We need to value communication. Oh boy. So, what repairs people? Well, I've been asking for the last 10 years, what helped? What worked? Because I kind of think, oh yeah, I've got all these interventions, I have ideas I've been studying for all this time, but what really worked? I mean, even tonight working with a pair, and they're like, we're fine, we're good. I'm like, really, what worked? And his response was listening and reflecting back what I heard. Because when I slowed down, instead of jumping in and saying, well, I think this, I don't agree with that, but here's what I'm thinking. But I say, what I hear you saying is, I hurt your feelings, and that goes back many, many years of being hurt that same way in your childhood. Then she feels heard. And he said, why did I not know this in 30 years of marriage? And what I said to him is, how would you have learned it? The movies? In school? Let's see. On the radio, maybe a YouTube on happiness. How to be happy. You know, there aren't places to learn this. So if somebody wants to make a film about my book, that's what I think needs to happen. We need to be able to see what I see in my office, to see it so we know what it looks like. Because people in my practice say, you want me to have a feeling? Sometimes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you feel anything? I don't know. I mean, I feel bewildered. That's a feeling, his wife will say. So it's a learning. What I create, the reason that there are breakthroughs is I create a scaffolding for safety and a simple way, I'll show you in a minute, to help people talk to each other in safety. And I'll give it to you to take home so you don't have to pay me if you don't want to, although take the big bucks. All right. So, in essence, people want to be seen and heard. People want to be seen and heard. What percentage of people do you think remember what they've heard in conversations? Anybody have a guess?
10%.
10%. 20.
Yeah, no further.
Anybody else have a guess? Yeah.
5%.
You got it.
Okay.
We've got an academician here. 5% of people, 5% memory. So if you and I have a conversation tonight, I will remember 5. I think you're going to remember 10. I could tell.
She likes
Yeah, so.
many people.
As David Brooks said, the journalist I like a lot, when let's see here, let me find it. When another person is talking, you want to be listening so actively that you're burning calories. Yeah, that worked for me. So anyway, the work I do is really kind of shocking. And at the end of the day, the real question is, how do you parallel this process so that it happens out there in the world? And again, not time to get into it, but just so you know, there are people doing major work all over the internationally to bring dialogue to large organizations and to in between countries in conflict. And you'll find that work under Peter Coleman, Coleman. Bridging Divides. It's quite impressive. They've got 500 people now working in this regard with other organizations. So back to my personal work. When I'm working with people who are triggered, which none of us have ever been, right? All it takes is somebody getting in your line in the grocery store, right? Or being on the bumper of your car, or when you're trying to get home at night. Like, wow. So there are things, little words I've learned over the years to use for people to kind of give them an image, because I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, so that they can remember when they're stressed. So one of the things I say to people is, when you're triggered, you're either going to do fight or flight. If you're doing flight, I call it the ostrich thing. So you're trying to pull away. You don't want to rock the boat. You're just being quiet. You're shutting down. But everybody can see that you're there, like an ostrich. You know, it's there even with the head down, right? So, hello, you feel the tension. You know there's something not being said. There's also the court of law. I call it the court of law because it's a conversation in which I use you statements. You were supposed to be here at 4:15 and you got here at 5. Is that not correct, John? No, that is not correct. I was here at 4:22. I even looked at my watch. No, you weren't. I looked at my cell phone, which is more accurate than your watch. Anyway, the point is, this I see a lot in families and with couples, and that is what we've been taught. It's nobody's fault. This is the way we're embedded in war, in our culture, and probably maybe worldwide now, which is that debate is a conversation. The problem with that is it doesn't create any connection. So what I tell the clients is intimacy is into me, you see. That is when I share it with an I statement, not a you statement, an I statement, what I'm feeling, what I need, and at least that person can usually hear a little bit of that. The other thing I see is that these circular arguments and the defenses that we have are a lot like out there. The defenses, what do we have all the time? We know what we have in the news. We have defenses. We have national defenses. We have armor. We have fighting. We have school shootings. We have this and that, fighting defensive shields. Everybody's got a wall up. We've got fences. We've got houses with high walls and big gated locks. We have a lot of armor. What we don't have is an ability or any learning about how to soften the walls, how to get down there. I call it going down the ladder, because clients don't know what I mean, and I'll say, well, I hear you that you feel better now that she's complimented you on your dress, but why is that so important? Why does that have so much meaning to you? Can we go down one more rung on the ladder? Well, because I grew up with a family of 10 kids and nobody noticed me. So when she says, that was beautiful what you did, he's 5 years old again at some level, like, whoa, I'm getting acknowledged. There's much more to the theory behind this, but that's the dropping of walls that happens in therapy, in good quality therapy. You can't have democracy without mental health. Clients ask over and over again, what hardened us? Why did we kind of start living these parallel lives? Why did the kids not talk to the parents? Why can't we get along even though we have different views on politics or vaccines or whatever? Well, we're hardened. There's a lot of fear in us, fight or flight. And the fear is a taboo. We do not have fear in this culture. We are not supposed to have fear. There's a great book called The Tyranny of Positivity by Susan Cain, in which she says something like, you know, if you have to cry in the workplace, for God's sake, go into the bathroom if you have to do it. We have a culture where we're not supposed to be afraid. So we don't talk about that. I can tell you right now, and this was at the bottom of the research on genocide, the man I quoted earlier said, if you do nothing else after this lecture on genocide, when you are angry, ask yourself the question, what am I afraid of? So, my cat had it right. We need to get out our hairballs, show face, and I'll explain that in a minute. And when my client calls my he calls my scaffolding, when I show people how to speak to each other better, he calls it rules for war, which I thought was so darling and so right. So unless you're doing harm to self or others, get the hairball out. Let me show you because I think, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and this is simple. It looks kind of childlike, but you want to pass that around because people, this is really useful. So here's the picture I show people. When you're anxious and you're in a conflict, it's real simple. It's in your face to save face. That's it. And you're looking at somebody's face, right? So you can remember. So two things clearly: the ears for listening. The first eye, the first eyeball stands for intention. If you're going to have a gutsy or crucial or delicate conversation, start with your intention. I want our friendship to be closer. I want us to have fun on the holidays this year. I just want to talk about some things because I love you so much and I'm feeling some tension. You start with your intent. That lowers the temperature. It lowers the layer of anger or defensiveness. Then you have I statement. The next I statement is only I statements, because when you do I instead of you, you're reflecting on yourself. You're not telling them what they need to do, which is what we all really know really well what other people need to do, right? So the I statement is I'm hurt or I'm afraid. It's anger goes in from the mouth. The mouth is where you blow wishes off a birthday cake. And when you're angry, the thing to do with that is to say what you need. Anger is unmet needs. So that's where you direct your anger. I need or I wish that is even softer. I wish that we could have dinner at 6 when we agreed because I'm starving to death. Or whatever the issue is. So that's simple. There's lots more to it, but I have just about 3 or 4 or 5 more minutes. Lastly, I want to read from my book. This is very personal and kind of hard to do, but that's what tonight is supposed to be. I'm supposed to do a reading. So this is true story, one of them from my life. Of course, my thing fell out, so now I can't find it. Okay, I've got to look in the index. Hold on.
Take your time.
Thank you.
There's no actual timer.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I have a concern about time, especially because I really believe in conversation. I don't believe in podiums. That's the other thing that I talk about in the book, which is architecture. We need benches in front of everything instead of big gates, and we don't need fences, we don't need borders, we don't need barriers everywhere. We need fences. We need benches, not fences. All right, so okay, here we go. This chapter is called Boundaries Are a Substitute for Soul. Let me get one sip of water. Thanks for being so patient. It's hot in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you stop speaking to someone for years, or you pull back. It's an unnecessary loss. Mom and I did not know how to talk through our hidden hurt. Oh, there were the friendly phone calls, the polite and brief conversations, but something was missing. It's not always the things we say to each other that destroy our relationships. It's sometimes the things unsaid that sever them. Words that sit like stale, unspoken resentments or fears reside inside us and between us in the thick space of silences that kill connection. I was afraid to say things I thought might hurt her. I learned in therapy that boundaries were good. So I withdrew from her. As she aged, she got angrier, and I shut down. I was afraid of her outbursts and criticisms. It didn't occur to me to tell her that. I thought, you can't change people. Don't rock the boat. I don't want to hurt her or fight. Pick your battles. While it may seem true that we can't change others, we can be brave ourselves and attempt repair and closure. But my trips to her from San Francisco to Seattle ended in a hurry. After one of those visits, she killed herself. We hid our judgments of each other, grimacing inside ourselves about each other's edgy, difficult characteristics. When we're afraid of telling the truth, we focus on the faults of others. She was controlling, pushing me to think the same way she did. We were too much alike. I was moody and hard to understand. We were so much alike, like mothers and daughters often are. The world fell in along with it, and along with it, contrasting, strange, and burdensome tasks of packing her things. Engulfed with selling, signing documents, and in shock, I was horrified with my first experience at a funeral parlor. The staff were white-faced. They walked toward me down a long gray corridor, like slithery, dusty ghosts. I remember wondering if the continual cremations in the basement, the fire-burning furnaces, had left residue sunken into them. I really did wonder that. It was surreal and lonely beyond anyone's ability to describe, unless you've gone through it. Standing there shattered, in an altered state, in unbearable sorrow, alongside these contrasting, robot-like, bony humans. It might seem like an odd insert here, but this writing is suddenly too hard. My mind darts around, boggled, looking for ways to tell you what it was like. I'm feeling inadequate for what this story wants me to convey. What I would give to have been brave enough to talk to her about unspoken feelings before she died. We think we have forever for this, but we don't. Closure is a gift we give ourselves, but it takes guts. If only I had the courage to say, Mom, I want to feel closer to you, or I get afraid around your rage. Instead, I withdrew. I became devoid of feeling, devouring cookies. Never taught to ask for what we want, walls and isolation remain a result. Boundaries are a substitute for soul, spaces separating our deep selves and longings. 6:30, I did it. It's your turn.